What if I told you that a wave of protests, led almost entirely by young people, managed to topple a European government? It sounds like something out of a movie, but this really happened. We're going to Bulgaria, a country where Gen Z activists, fed up with corruption and a bleak economic future, took to the streets and sparked a political revolution. This isn't just a story about protests. It's a story about the incredible power of a generation that decided enough was enough. So how did it all start? The trigger wasn't one single event, but a slow burn of frustration that had been building for years. Imagine you're a young person in Bulgaria. You've grown up hearing promises of a brighter, more European future after the fall of communism. You've worked hard, gone to university, but when you look around, you see the same old problems. Jobs are scarce, salaries are low, and it feels like the only way to get ahead is through connections, not merit. At the heart of this frustration was a deep-seated issue: corruption. For years, Bulgaria has been ranked as one of the most corrupt countries in the European Union. This wasn't just some abstract concept discussed by politicians. It was a daily reality. People saw public funds meant for roads, hospitals, and schools disappearing into the pockets of a select few. They saw oligarchs living lavish lifestyles while ordinary citizens struggled to make ends meet. It created a profound sense of injustice, a feeling that the system was rigged. For the younger generation, who grew up with access to the internet and social media, this reality was impossible to ignore. They could see how their peers in other EU countries were living. They saw opportunities and standards of living that seemed out of reach in their own homeland. This digital connection didn't just breed envy, it bred a powerful sense of shared identity and a desire for change. They were Europeans and they demanded the same standards of transparency and governance as anyone else in the Union. The specific protest that brought down the government began to gain momentum in the summer of 2020. The immediate spark was a series of scandals that exposed the cozy relationship between politicians, prosecutors, and powerful business figures. But these weren't your typical old-school protests organized by established political parties or unions. This was different. The organization was decentralized, organic, and incredibly fast. It was all happening on Facebook, Instagram, and Telegram. Hashtags started trending. Memes mocking the government went viral. Young people shared information, coordinated meeting points, and encouraged each other to come out. There was no single leader. It was a collective movement. The first few protests were small, but they grew exponentially. Day after day, night after night, thousands of young people flooded the streets of the capital, Sofia, and other major cities. The atmosphere was incredible. It was a mix of anger and hope, a festival of dissent. They brought speakers to play music. They chanted creative and often hilarious slogans, and they used their phones as torches, creating a sea of light in the city squares. The protesters' demands were clear: the resignation of the Prime Minister, Boyko Borisov, and the Chief Prosecutor, Ivan Geshev. They accused them of being the architects of the corrupt system, of enabling the mafia state that was holding the country back. The government initially tried to dismiss them. They called the protesters hooligans, paid agents, and spoiled kids who didn't know what they wanted. But this only fueled the anger. The young protesters were smart. They knew the world was watching. They used social media to broadcast their message internationally. They gave interviews to foreign media, explaining their fight in fluent English. They emphasized that this wasn't about left versus right. It was about right versus wrong. It was a fight for justice, democracy, and the rule of law. They weren't just protesting against something. They were protesting for something, a normal European future. What was truly remarkable was the persistence of the movement. The protests went on for months. Through scorching summer heat and cold autumn nights, they were there. They didn't give up. The government tried various tactics to quell the movement. They tried ignoring them. they tried intimidating them with a heavy police presence. There were clashes, arrests, and moments of tension. But the resolve of the young people never wavered. This persistence started to shift public opinion. Initially, some older Bulgarians were skeptical. They had seen many protests come and go without any real change. But seeing their children and grandchildren on the streets day after day, fighting for a better future, began to change their minds. Parents started joining their kids. Grandparents brought water and food to the protesters. The movement bridged a generational gap, uniting the country in a shared desire for change. The pressure became immense. The government's approval ratings plummeted. The constant protest paralyzed the capital and dominated the news cycle, both at home and abroad. The European Union, which had often turned a blind eye to Bulgaria's corruption problems, could no longer ignore the situation. The protest put Bulgaria's rule of law crisis firmly on the European agenda. Finally, after months of relentless pressure, the government couldn't hold on any longer. While the Prime Minister didn't resign immediately, the protests fundamentally broke his grip on power. The subsequent parliamentary elections saw his party suffer a massive defeat. New political forces born directly out of the protest movement entered parliament with a clear mandate to dismantle the corrupt system. It was a seismic shift in the country's political landscape. The government that was formed after those elections was fragile, but its primary goal was clear: judicial reform and tackling corruption. The protests had achieved their main objective. They had forced a political reset and brought new, reform-minded people into power. The youth had shown that they were not apathetic or disengaged. They were a political force to be reckoned with. So what are the key takeaways from this incredible story? First, it's a powerful testament to the impact of youth activism. Gen Z is often stereotyped as being glued to their screens, but the Bulgarian protests show that they can translate online mobilization into real-world political power. They use the tools of their generation to organize, communicate, and challenge the status quo in ways that were previously unimaginable. Second, it highlights the importance of persistence. Change doesn't happen overnight. The Bulgarian youth protested for months, enduring criticism, intimidation, and fatigue. Their unwavering commitment is what ultimately made the difference. They proved that sustained, peaceful protest can wear down even the most entrenched political establishments. And third, it's a story of hope. It shows that even when a system seems hopelessly corrupt and broken, change is possible. It demonstrates that ordinary citizens, especially young people, have the power to hold their leaders accountable and demand a better future. The story of the Bulgarian protests is an inspiration for young people everywhere who are frustrated with the state of their own countries. It's a reminder that your voice matters, that your actions can have a profound impact, and that you should never ever underestimate the power of a generation united for a cause. This movement in Bulgaria wasn't just a fleeting moment of anger. It was the beginning of a long and difficult process of rebuilding a nation. The fight against corruption is far from over, but the youth have kick-started a crucial conversation and brought about a change in mentality. They have shown that they are willing to fight for their future, and that is perhaps the most significant victory of all. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as inspiring as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the events shaping our world. Let me know in the comments what you think about the power of youth-led movements. See you next time.